Hello everyone. If you're planning to apply to top universities in the US, you have likely encountered a confusing and rapidly changing situation regarding the SAT and ACT test requirements. So, after years where test optional became the norm during the pandemic, the landscape is, of course, shifting again, especially, among the most selective colleges. Today, we are diving into the latest research analyzing these policy changes. We look at which top universities are bringing back mandatory testing, which are staying test optional or test free. We'll talk about the data driven reasons where, the reasons that they are giving and what reported internal discussions or leaks. So, this is crucial information for students and parents who are trying to navigate the current admission cycle. So, you need to be aware of all the points. So, let's quickly recap how we got here. Now, before 2020, submitting SAT or ACT scores, it was standard practice. It was a common practice for almost all the top US colleges. The pandemic actually, forced everybody to test optional due to the testing disruption. So that was quite common. Now, this created a large scale experiment. It gave colleges several years of data, okay, on admissions without requiring scores. So that was the criteria earlier. But now, with testing access restored, universities are actually making long term decisions. And we are able to see a clear split, particularly among the most selective institutions. Like, think of the Ivy League, MIT, Stanford, top universities, and also similar schools. Now, a significant and influential group of top universities has announced a return to mandatory SAT or ACT submission requirements. It has become mandatory now. They want it to be mandatory. Now, institutions like MIT and Georgetown led this trend starting around 2022, but then it accelerated significantly in 2024 and 2025, with major Ivy League schools reversing their previous optional stances. Harvard, for instance, had previously committed to being test optional through the class of 2030, but then gradually changed its course. Their research shows that test scores strongly predict academic success, like first year GPA at their specific institution, sometimes better than the high school GPA alone, especially given grade inflation. And this is mentioned by MIT, and especially when they talked about the math scores. Then we need to understand what equity via context is. So this is a key, though sometimes it is counter intuitive argument, but they claim test optional policies can harm talented students from less resourced backgrounds who might not be able to submit scores, which are below average and strong for their environment. So, requiring scores allows admissions to see this data point and evaluate it in context to identify the potential. So, here I would like to emphasize on Dartmouth, Yale, Harvard, and Brown because they emphasized on this. Now, if we talk about the objectivity, now some argue that tests often a more standardized measure as compared to essays or activities which can be influenced by resources. Removing the should I submit guesswork reduces your stress. And this is quoted by UPenn. Now, a notable study influencing several Ivy League decisions in the 2023 paper by economists like Raj Chelly, David Deming, and John Friedman, suggesting tests help identify diverse talent and might be less biased than the subjective application path. Now, despite these high-profile reinstatements, many other top universities are holding firm on test optional or test-free policies. Their rationales, they actually, identify different priorities. Like if we talk about holistic review, so this helps, in evaluating applicants comprehensively using the GPA, course rigor, essays, recommendations, and also activities without mandated scores. Next, I wish to talk about access and diversity. So, it's a belief that optional policies lower the barriers for underrepresented students, and this potentially increases the applicant pool diversity. If I talk about questioning the predictive power, I would say that, placing more weight on high school performance in context than on the standardized scores. Then last is reducing the applicant stress, okay, because the students need to reduce their stress, and they need to focus on the applications beyond the test scores. So this will actually allow the students to be in a particular direction. Now, the University of California system, that is the UCLA Berkeley, okay, it represents the strongest stance, okay, being permanently test free. Now, they will not consider SAT or ACT scores for admission decisions at all. Fine. Based on their own internal reviews and equity concerns, they will not do that. So they have reported admitting highly diverse classes under this policy. Now, it's also important to note that test optional can mean different things. Now, some schools genuinely they don't penalize non-submitters like Duke and Vanderbilt, while others might still implicitly recommend or value scores if available, like for example Rice. Okay, now the research that we are drawing from looked specifically at whether data-driven leaks, public disclosures of internal data, or discussions, whether they are actually influencing these policy shifts. So it's important to distinguish between different kinds of information. If I talk about official citing of internal research, so this is quite common. Universities like Dartmouth, Yale, Harvard, Brown, MIT, they officially state that their decisions are based on internal studies showing scores that predict success, and they also aid equity when used contextually. So they reference their reference data findings are, they actually don't typically release the full data sets or methods publicly. If I talk about the internal documentation leaks or the discussion leaks, they are quite rare. Now, the most prominent example here would be of the Caltech faculty petition. Now, before Caltech officially reinstated tests, an internal petition arguing for it, citing specific internal data points like, alleged declining performance in certain EE courses and competitions under test optional. All of them, all this was actually leaked to the student newspaper. Now, this leak, what happened after that was it revealed internal faculty pressure and specific data was being debated before the official announcement. So, this is what happened. Now, even like the 2025 NYU data hack, where hackers released stolen applicant data and they made claims about admissions, they are different because all this covers the external data breaches because it was an external attack. It wasn't internal data analysis driving policy because it was something different. So while universities claim data drives universities feel that they claim that the data drives their reinstatement decisions, true leaks revealing internal conflicts or data, they are quite infrequent. So more often we see official announcements referencing internal findings without full transparency, so making it harder for outsiders to fully verify the claims. Okay, so this policy divergence highlights a deep debate here. Arguments for required testing often center on, let's talk about predictive validity. So scores correlate with college success metrics like GPA, graduation. Then we'll talk about equity through context. So it helps find talented students from disadvantaged backgrounds, whose scores are relatively strong as compared to their environment. Okay, and if I talk about the objectivity, so I think it provides a standardized measure compared to subjective essays and activities. Also, it's more clear, it provides more clarity as it removes the applicant stress over whether to submit, okay, or like how to submit and how am I supposed to do that. These are the common questions that comes in the mind of every student. So yeah. Okay, now I would like to bring in some arguments against required testing. All right, so let's talk about inherent equity concerns. So tests reflect societal inequalities in resources and preparation, and also the score gaps persist somehow. Then other factors like GPA, rigor, essays, LORs, they provide a better assessment. So it's like, a holistic review. Then if I talk about the access barriers, I would like to talk about testing cost, prep access, test anxiety. They can actually deter capable underserved students. And of course, the scope is limited because tests measure a narrow skill set. they miss out on other forms of intelligence of potential. Now, this debate actually, it is also, we can say that, influenced by the Supreme Court ruling on race conscious admissions, that is the SFFA. Some see reinstating tests as a race neutral tool for diversity, but while others would believe that it exacerbates inequalities now that race cannot be explicitly considered. So both sides claim their policy better supports diversity, leading to conflicting narratives. Reinstatement proponents say mandatory tests plus contextual review, they will help you find diverse talent. Test optional proponents say removing the requirement boosts diverse applications. Emerging data is complex. Let's talk about MIT, for example. So, this admitted a diverse class after reinstating tests, but before the SFFA ruling. Their first class admitted under both test required and post SFFA rules saw a significant drop actually in Black and Hispanic representation, which MIT had attributed solely to the SFFA and not the tests. So the UC system, being test free, reported record diversity. It's extremely difficult to isolate the impact of testing policy alone due to confounding factors like the SFFA ruling, recruitment efforts, and financial aid. So, what does this mean for you? Applying soon? First, research is absolutely critical. So, policies are changing every time, every now and then policies are changing especially among the top schools. So, you must check the specific testing policy for each university on your list for the year that you are applying. Now, it's very important to understand the difference between test required, test optional, test flexible, test free. Okay, you need to understand the difference between all of them. Remember here that test optional might still mean scores are welcomed or even preferred for scholarships. So you need to remember that. Now, navigating this complex and shifting landscape, deciding whether to test and which test to take if you do, how to prepare effectively, it requires careful planning and understanding your own strengths and abilities. Okay. Making sense of these changing requirements and figuring out the best preparation strategy for your target schools can feel overwhelming. Personalized guidance can help you create a plan, a clear one. Whether you need prep for required SAT or ACT, decide if submitting scores is strategic for test optional schools or simply build foundation skills. Resources like Wizdomi offer tailored support. They provide one-on-one live tutoring classes for K-12 academics and test preparation. So exploring their first free class could be a really helpful way to discuss your environment. So knowing your options and having a plan will help you reduce and lower down your stress. Now, the role of standardized tests at top US universities, it's clearly in flux. We can see a split between influential schools returning to required testing, citing data on prediction and equity via context, and many others maintaining optional or free policies, prioritizing holistic review and access. Expect this fragmentation to continue. Universities will monitor outcomes, holistic review will remain vital, especially post SFFA, and the tests themselves may continue to evolve. The debate over the value and fairness is far from over. Now, your best approach is to stay informed, research diligently, understand the why behind different policies, and make strategic decisions about testing based on your target schools and personal strengths. So, what are your thoughts on these changing policy? Let us know in the comments. If this analysis was helpful, please like and subscribe for more updates on college admissions and check the description for links to resources. Thanks for watching and good luck navigating the application process. All the very best.